Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hello once again to all of you, and welcome again to the Literary Hour. I'm your co-host, Jackie Sai, along with my professor, Professor K. Moses Nangbe. Welcome, Prof.
Thank you, Jackie. It's nice to be here.
And today we are honored to have with us Mr. Vamba Sherif. Welcome, Vamba.
Thank you, Jackie.
We're so glad you're here. We're so glad. We're going to ask you so many questions. But first, for those who do not know Vamba Sherif, and I don't know who they are, but for those of you who don't know, I will introduce him so you can go and get some of his books and start reading, and you can know the writer and the journalist. So Vamba Sherif is a writer and journalist who was born in Kolahon, Liberia, and grew up partly in Kuwait. He left Kuwait during the Gulf War and came to the Netherlands in 1993. His debut novel, Land of the Fathers, which was published in 1999, is partly based on his grandmother's stories, and it deals with the clash between the freed peoples returning from the United States and other Liberians. Author of Secrecy, which was published in 2007, is a whodunit about a man investigating a disappearance, and it describes the way power and its abuse function in Africa. His novel, The Black Napoleon, portrays Samori Touré, who in the 19th century founded the Wasulu Empire in Western Africa. Bamba's journalistic work, including film reviews, appears in publications like the New York Times, Trove, and One World. Together with Ibisi Rao, he compiled Swat, which is Black, in 2018, which is a collection of stories written by Afro-European authors from the Low Countries. In 2021, his book, Unprecedented Love, will be published, in which he tells his life story. I think it is published. He tells his life story to his 10-year-old daughter, Bindu. Bound to Secrecy was chosen as one of the 10 best translated books in Germany in 2010. So we are very happy to have Vamba Sherif today, and we're going to talk to him about his books. We're going to discuss his motivation, and we're going to discuss everything in between. So have your fingers ready to put your questions, and we'll begin. So again, welcome. We're so happy you're here. I will defer to Prof. Nangbe for the first question. So, Prof?
Well, okay. Actually, Vamba, like Jackie said, welcome, and we hope we will have a very good time here. Someone who has lived in a couple of places, no doubt has a wealth of experiences to share. When you get into the writing process, what does home look like to you? What is your definition of home?
Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you so much, Professor. I grew up in Liberia, and I became acquainted with your work. I even remember after the war, when I went to Liberia back to home for the first time, I was able to acquire some copies of your work. So I admire you. You are a source of inspiration for me. You and the late Sankawolo, the professor, and Baltimore, who I am related to through marriage.
Oh,
Yes, yes. My aunt Loba was married to Baltimore.
Oh,
Uh, yes. So it's a privilege that you are with me, that we are talking about literature. So home, um, for a long time, I think when you leave home, I left early. I was very young when I left before the war. So when I left, home was to me that part of Liberia, northern Liberia, that Sherif compound, where we woke up early in the morning, swept the yard before going to school. That was home for me. Home was not actually Kuwait, although it was a great place to live. But my longing for home was just, it was defined, clearly defined. During every vacation, I want to return home. I want to go back to Sherif quarter and see the family. But then this war came, and so what remained of home were only memories. So the people that I could relate to, the people who carry those memories, scattered all over the world. So the definition of home, began to become very difficult for me, because the home that I knew was gone, more or less. And some of the people who defined that home, some of them were dead, some of them were victims of the war. And so where I was, where I could call home, Kuwait, was not available anymore. I had to leave that place. I was forced to leave that place because of someone else's acts, deeds. So I fled Kuwait, went through Jordan, spent some time there, and spent 2 years in Syria, in Damascus. And so home became a very tentative, very shifting definition for me, with the Liberian War and with the war that that occurred in Kuwait. So I could not. So I began to struggle, because every time you move to a place, you are trying to own it. To say, all right, I want to belong to this place. You begin to learn the language, like I did in Kuwait, speaking Arabic and things. And then you are forced to leave that place, then go elsewhere. In my case, that was in the Netherlands. You're trying to reclaim that. And so there's this struggle continuously to try to prove yourself, because people see you have this dark skin. They'll say, all right, although you speak our language fluently, you don't belong to us. So for a long time, home was Liberia, but after the war, it became very difficult to define home. So these were the struggles, and it stayed the struggles that I face here, even though I've lived here longer than even in Liberia. I've lived there for nearly 25 years now.
So,
Yes.
so then we see whom not necessarily as structures,
No.
but as people and memories.
Yes, and this is why, and trying, actually, my attempt, all my novels, is an attempt to reclaim that home, because that home that I knew is gone. And there are other novelists who have done that successively, like Isaac Bashev Singer, the Polish Jewish American writer, who, after fleeing the Second World War from Poland, tried to write about the lives of Jews before the war in Poland. And so this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to reclaim that home, that Liberia that was before the war, and the impact of that war on Liberia, and the people who live there. Yes.
And Prof and I were discussing about that, because there's this whole discusussion around belonging. That where you fit in is not necessarily where you belong.
Yeah.
The two are sometimes different. And I was saying to him that past African writers, what they occupy their time, their topics were corruption in the country, national issues, and now you see a whole new breed of African writers.
Yeah.
And these new breed of African writers, one of the topics that really push the boundaries is migration. And migration in all is not just the transatlantic slave, it's the slave trade, it's the migration of memories, it's the migration of ideas, it's the migration of people who, like you say, try to make a place where they do not that although they are physically there, they
Mm-hmm.
do not fit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they do not belong. So it seems as if
Mm-hmm.
all of the time it
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
this quest for the Holy Grail,
Mm-hmm.
which is I will write about what I remembered,
Mm-hmm.
and through the memories I might belong,
Yes.
or I will write about what is stopping me from belonging in this country where I'm physically present. You know, so I think that, yeah, I think that it is a very difficult tightrope.
It is.
You know
It is.
that yeah,
Yes, because the efforts to belong does not depend on your efforts alone. You, the
yes,
migrant,
yes,
it depends on how the people in the country, in the new country in which you are living, receive you. And so this is the struggles that we are doing, that we are and the fights that we are waging here,
yeah,
and so it's for me, uh, belonging, um, yes, even within the Liberian context, um, uh, my books and my stories, um, is an attempt to claim my Liberianness, to say, all right, I might not be in Liberia right now, I might be away for this length of time, but I own this land, I belong to this land, and it belongs to me, this country. So this is the constant struggle I'm doing. And even because, I mean, in Holland, where I live now, also defines me. So I'm trying to claim it as mine too. To say to the Dutch, I belong here, even though the Dutch don't. Some of them doubt it, or some of them even confront me to say, "All right, no, 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 you don't belong here. You're an African." And some of them even do doubt that I'm a Dutch. They say, "All right, that Liberian writer," and I don't dispute it at all, because all my writings are rooted in the Liberian reality, are defined by the early memories of Liberia. And it's also a privilege that I'm able to write, these stories, because many, in my position, migrants, exiles, and don't have that opportunity to write their stories, to tell their stories. So it's a privilege, but it's also this constant struggle, to define yourself, to claim where you are and where you left from, you know. So it's an ongoing struggle, I think. I Sometimes I always say, when I'm in Liberia, I have this sense of euphoria, and sometimes it lasts for like a week or two,
yes,
and the reality of Liberia begin to descend, and then you are faced with, you know some difficulties, not, because the stories and the experiences of people during the war sometimes are so terrible, but also humanity in the stories. So I find myself longing for Liberia when I'm there, and really dreaming. I mean, it's so great. I remember the last time I was there, we took a trip to Lofa with my sisters and family members in this jeep, and we're talking for hours. It's a long trip from Monrovia to Kolahun, and we arrive at 3 in the morning, and we're talking. And what I realized were how good Liberian storytellers they are. I mean, I said, oh, if I had something to record these stories, it's wonderful.
like Chief TC in
Yes,
Vamba.
yes, yes. This
The storyteller, yeah,
the secrecy, right?
yes, yes, yes. So
Yes.
since we're talking about homecoming, Prof and I wanted to talk about the Morovia ring, just your article, your short story in it,
Mhm.
and this is about you, right? This is an
Yeah. Yes, yes,
yeah,
definitely. Yes, yes.
and then you were surprised when the driver said, "Oh, I used to drive. I was a driver for the rebels.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
you were shocked at that. And then when you went to your brother, he
Mhm.
had all these children in his house.
Yes, yes.
So, but the thing that made me chuckle when I read it was how you were afraid that, oh, somebody might poison or somebody might not what you've heard, not that they will poison you, but you've heard
Yes, but
that people,
I mean,
yeah,
this
that
was the
people,
reality,
yeah,
right? I think the Professor Nangu, you might attest to this. I mean, there were rumors circulating all around that people go for vacation, they'll be poisoned, and then it's all over. You know, so I mean, this, and as being a writer, you try to write about these things. The fear exists, right?
yeah, but
Now,
yeah,
that
bro,
brings in again, so there is a mix of autobiographical pieces. You remember some
Indeed.
time ago we were
Yeah.
doing autobiography and biography.
Hmm.
So what stories he's got to tell also kind of fuse into the genre of
Yeah.
autobiography and biography,
Yeah. Yeah.
along the line of
Yeah.
other major writers
Mm.
that we've known about in time, even as a way of understanding
Yeah.
that the stories that we tell.
Mm.
I started this conversation by talking about the question of home.
Hmm.
So we may not talk about the physicality of home,
Hmm.
but the spirituality of home,
Mm.
the psychology of home,
Mm.
the idea of kind of bringing stories together
Hmm.
that remind you
Yes.
of who you are, what you
Mm.
are, and how
Mm.
you relate to other people.
Yes.
All these things coming together probably get to be the extension of the word home.
Mm.
So then, if we are talking about the denotative meaning as well
Mm.
as the connotative meaning of the
Mm.
word,
Mm.
probably we will agree that home has to do more about the connotative meaning,
Mm.
and it's not so much of the four walls
yeah,
into
Mm.
which we go or the land that
Mm.
we can visit every now and then. But the
Yes.
idea that we carry the life of the real home into
Mm.
other places,
yes,
Yes.
so that even
Yes.
to some extent we talk about the universality of humanity.
Hmm.
That becomes the thing that we
Yes.
so fully understand more than any
Yes.
other thing.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The universality of humanity,
Yeah.
and that's why literature is so very important,
Yeah.
because it's the one that really define humanity. I
Mhm.
mean, like no other medium,
Mhm.
because I mean, I read a Japanese story and identify with the character.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel his or her pain.
Mhm.
So it's the same thing,
Yeah.
because these are the stories that emphasize
Mhm.
our humanity,
Mhm.
and so the story in the Moravia Rain is a combination of fiction and fact, and I had to create this distance, by situating this story elsewhere. I think it was from Belgium or this story, I don't know, and to be able to deal with the pain of writing, because sometimes people uh, forget that it's very difficult to write about pain, and sometimes as a writer, you need to create a certain distance, and this is why some writers shy away from writing memoirs, because you are going to confront what you've been trying,
Mhm.
creating this distance with, in fiction. And
Mhm.
then in writing a memoir, you're confronting that harsh reality, and sometimes it's unbearable to do, and you have to pay that price, because being confronting such pain, sometimes you pay the price one way or another, and so all my novels are aspect of my life, directly or indirectly, and I've been trying, in a fictional, form, to write this, to deal with those aspects of my life, and the land of my fathers was an attempt to really show my surprise and shock at a country that was for me a symbol of freedom, a symbol for many other countries in Africa, a country I was proud of to see such a country waging war on itself. So I was like, how is that possible? You know, so it is trying to answer that question was going back to the beginning of Liberia and not the people are trying to perhaps sell the book as a clash between people who returned and the people they met home. But when you read a novel, it's actually a novel of friendship between an American Liberian born and bred in slavery who left the United States and came to Liberia and met this very remarkable man who is inspired. Yes, Harley, who is inspired by this historical character. When you go to Lova, especially in Kolahan district, there was a man once upon a time who was called Harley.
But you see, Vamba, when I read that book, what I thought, I mean, yes, I enjoyed the book. For me, the Haile was, it was right that he martyred himself. And the reason is, I saw it as the death of tradition, the death of culture. That when you bring a dominant, when you bring a foreign culture that has power, that's how I love the friendship in the book. Don't get me wrong. Edward and Haile, they were fine. But I said to myself, something's got to give. There is no way they will these two groups will live together without something giving. And that thing for me was Haile saying, I will sacrifice myself. And I said, of course he will. Tradition always dies. You know, at the force. And it could be, I mean, it was my reading of the book.
Yes.
You know?
Which is, I mean, and that's your privilege, right? And that's a powerful interpretation of the story. And I mean, from now on, when I'm telling us this story, I think I will mention what you just told me. Indeed,
I felt that something was going to give, and that if we look at it purely as a historical book, right? That you put the friendship aside, and you look at it as a historical book, you know the group that became dominant. So if that group became dominant, you know that you are not rewriting the narrative.
No.
You know, so that's how I saw it. But you know, in your book or your books, there's an underlying theme for me, because like, I don't know, I always go back and be like, and it's this theme of duality. You know, that everything is not as it seems.
No.
What you're looking at is only the surface. There's an underneath. You know, there's always an underneath. In Homecoming, I forgot, he said, truth takes on many forms. Truth has many forms.
Yes. Bound to Secrecy, yes.
And when I'm reading, and we will go to Bound to Secrecy, but when I'm reading it, I'm like, something behind it. You know how Liberian people can say something's behind it. You know, so it's really interesting, this duality, and we can discuss it more because it's more in Bound to Secrecy than I think in any of the other books. You know, but before we go into that, maybe Prof has another question for you, or
No, in fact, that is talking about the duality. That is central to literature.
Yes.
You know, because we are using words, we are using symbols to interpret life. And in the context of interpreting life, there's got to be this duality. There's got to be the number of meaningful levels of understanding a particular text, of understanding a particular body of work. And so it's good that you brought that up. And sometimes the understanding of the plethora of levels. Doesn't rest only even with the author, because we are all coming from a variety of backgrounds to deal with a particular piece of work. And that's why, for instance, you talk about the reader response as an approach to literature. So it has its and that is why every now and then I say that just as in law, I let people know that courtroom law is important, but legal scholarship is even more important. Being able to understand the case, being able to look at the context within which the case appears. So in the same vein, when we are talking about literature, we are talking about a body of work. We've got to understand that, yes, the writer gives us something to study. The idea that we have literary critics to be able to interpret that piece of work becomes even doubly important. It is in that context of interpreting that work that the work it kind of spreads out. The importance of the work spreads out, so that all other people coming to it with a meaningful variety of perspectives will kind of make the piece of work grow.
Indeed. And Jackie just proved it. She interpreted Leonard Martha so powerfully to me.
I'm sorry. I just thought I read the book as a book of friendship, but then like you say, there's a duality. The duality was that. But maybe we can see if we have some comments before we go on to the other book. I mean, I know people are watching, but do they have comments? We had asked them to read the book.
Oh, that's wonderful. Professor Namgwe, you're looking good and young. What is your secret?
I don't know about secret. I'm trying to live, that's all.
Mamacita Kuma, my knowledgeable son, Vamba Sherif.
Thank you.
May Allah continue to bless you, son.
Thank you so much.
Out here, Romeo Mark says, I had the same struggle to tour and try to claim my home, the Caribbean, through writing. I have lived in Switzerland since 1991 and Liberia before that, 1976 to 1990. Yes. Watching from Marietta, Georgia, Anastasia Simmons. Yes.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you.
Home is the luggage you carry with you wherever you go. It is true. It is true, Professor. Yeah, it is true. I'm okay, Frank. So I mean, it's so true. That because even my children used to say that, and my colleagues, they say when Jackie is going home, she said, "Oh, I'm going to my house." When she say I'm going home, she's going to Liberia. As it should be. As it should be. Yeah. So before we go to Bound to Secrecy, Prof and I have been talking some shows ago about the characteristics of the African literary canon, and we said that it's didactic. The writers are the conscience of the society. They are the moral voice of the society. But also within the literature, within African literature, community is sacrosanct and sacred and paramount, right? So every spoke in the wheel, every individual is there to support the community. As we saw in Things Fall Apart. If you threaten the community, you will be ostracized or killed. So given this all of these characteristics of the African literature, right? Would you say that as a writer, that you are also the moral conscience of the society? And if so, which society?
Thank you so much. I think in the beginning with Things Fall Apart and Gungi Watingles with Norchad and those novels, I think the role of the African writer was clearly defined. You had this white folks, you have this colonizers present among the Africans. And so as a reaction, like Salman Rushdie said, the empire struck back. So the empire was striking back through those writers telling their stories, emphasizing their humanities, writing back to the empire. So it was very, very clearly defined. I mean, even before Achibi, with Bernard Dadier and Senghor and Aimé Césaire in Paris, and this whole negritude movement was an attempt to reclaim the Africanness, to say, all right, you might be Eurocentric, and everything we are learning in school might be Eurocentric, but we have something that we can be proud of. That's our blackness. So you have Bernard Dadier singing, I thank Almighty God for having created me black, for having set over my head the word, these beautiful, powerful lines, singing all those things. But African literature has evolved, I think. And yes, I've always felt with each and every one of my novels this sense of responsibility to the people, the culture from which I hailed, and that's the Liberian culture. Actually, a burden that I'm carrying. It's so I feel that I have to represent Liberia and represent that culture in this alien world, in this different country in which I'm living. So I've always had this responsibility, and sometimes I feel that the burden is too much to bear. Sometimes I feel like, all right, maybe it's about time to just cast it off and do something else. I mean, these are temptations. The Christ was tempted, so other things happen. So. But I think I cannot run away from it, because every time I attempt to do that, I mean, something happened that draws me back to my beginning, to Liberia. So it's yes.
Yeah, and of course, I'm glad you say it's a temptation. That burden has to be a beautiful burden.
Indeed.
Without you seeing it as a beautiful burden, you will not brace yourself using your knowledge and skills
Indeed.
to keep interpreting, because that's what it is. The writer is the interpreter of life, whether for the better or for the worse, is an interpreter of life. And if you found a calling in that context, then definitely you've got to continue to keep it in the back of your mind, so that that burden doesn't become a literal burden, a literal burden, physical burden, but a role, a responsibility, a vocation to be able to kind of allow people to understand what life is. Sometimes we sit in our little corners and believe we understand life, but sometimes actually engaging with life through the works of other people kind of bring newer and forceful meaning to life at itself.
Definitely.
Okay, okay. So now it's my
turn. There is that book.
Okay, so we've been discussing the fact that the new breed of African writers, they have multiplicity of themes now. It's no longer just corruption or national consciousness. There are all these things. So I guess that Bound to Secrecy is in that vein, because Bound to Secrecy is a crime novel, right?
Yeah, it's a crime novel.
And if you haven't read this book, you need to read this book. Listen to me, all of you who are watching, you need to buy this book, because I couldn't put this book down. And before we discuss this book, Prof, I want to read something from Ayekwe Ama, Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. And I quote, "There is indeed a great force in the world, a force spiritual and able to shape the physical universe. But that force is not something cut off. not something separate from ourselves. It is the energy in us, the strongest in our working, breathing, thinking together as one people. It is weakest when we are scattered, when we are confused, when we are broken into individual, unconnected fragments. It is strongest when we are together. That quotation summarizes this book. This book. Okay, let me just say something. So the book is about this guy named William. We are not going to tell you everything because we want you to read this book.
Yes.
But it's about this guy William, and the energy and the underneath that holds a people together. You know, Prof and I, we're always talking about what is your core. You know, we discussed that even last week, right, Prof? We said, what is it that if somebody says, what are you? How will you say, I am this thing? As a country, what is Liberia? What holds you? You know, what is that unshakable compass? Your North Star. You know, and Ayeku Ama sums it up. And Achebe says it's the chi.
Yes.
Right? He says it's that thing that guides you, you know. So this book may be a crime novelette novel, but this book it tells you that there's this mystical underneath of things that I always say to know and to know, you know, and it comes about with belonging. If you are part of this mystical society, you belong. And when you say something, there's this duality that those who don't belong will not understand. That's you. So, Vamba, this book truly is, I mean, I really, really enjoyed reading this book.
Thank you.
Know, I almost, let me tell you, I almost burned my food today. Yes, because I was marking in a book and I said, no. I went back to another page and then I was like, oh, I almost burned my food. So, so without telling the story, tell us a little bit about how this Bound to Secrecy came about.
Indeed. You know, we all grew up reading detective novels and crime novels.
Jeffrey Archer.
Yes, Jeffrey Archer, and others, and but indeed, we talk about duality and the importance of culture. The aspect of that culture that really defined me and that really fascinated me. But the catalyst for writing this novel was when I read another novel written by the Turkish writer Orhan Pamuk. It's called My Name is Red. It's a novel in which the entire Turkish civilization, the Ottoman civilization, is captured in that novel. And I was thinking, oh my God, if someone could do this, you know, and so beautifully, so wonderfully, I would try to respond, you know, to this novel by writing a novel in the same vein, in this, you know, a detective, because My Name is Red is also a detective, but it's also a meditation on the, you know, lost civilization and things like that. So it's very powerful work, you know. So in an attempt to respond to Orhan Pamuk's work, I wrote Bound to Secrecy. And I wrote it because in the African culture, especially the Liberian culture, this duality is so very strong. And I thought that was the key to it. And actually, it was the easiest novel that I've ever written, because it was like it was waiting to be, you know, to be written, you know. So it was not difficult at all. And And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I was reading it and laughing out loud sometimes, right, while doing the writing, which hardly ever happens to me. So it was really a definition of uh, aspects of the Liberian culture, and yes, put in a detective form, and also indeed what the quotation from Aiko Ama, who I admire so very much, to show this essence, this unity, the things that define us, how it is important for us to come together, and if we do, I mean, no force can defeat us. And yes, so that's how the novel existed. And the title Bound to Secrecy, I took it from the title of another novel written by the Malian writer who was very, very young when he broke through, a very, very, very genius to me, but who disappeared, after publishing his first novel, Yambo Ologowem, who wrote Bound to Violence, a novel that I think people should read. It's very difficult to define, but it's to me, one of the most beautiful novels ever written. And so out of admiration for him and as a kind of homage to his work, I choose to use the same title, instead of Bound to Violence, I said Bound to Secrecy, because that's the essence of the novel, actually. Yes. And the novel is also an allusion. You read some things, and I grew up hearing the story of this soldier, this song, the Professor Manoy and you too. Yapawulo who go you go Liberia gave so instead of using the name Yapawulo, and you can see that the character, that the scene when he was in this mountain and people were drilling and they were singing this song. So I wanted to allude to the song and not mentioning the song itself, And so you see, and the main theme, one of the main themes of this novel is power, and how I saw power being displayed in a. I mean, I saw it happening after that is. After the war in Liberia, when I went home several times, I saw power being displayed in ways it's incredible. It's incredible.
But you've so beautifully written that power doesn't need to be displayed.
No.
No, power doesn't need to shout.
Is it?
Power.
Yes.
Power. When you have true power,
yes,
it is recognized by others as
yes.
a legitimate power.
Yes,
you don't need to shout.
You don't need to and that's actually the problem with William, because he is displaying his power because he's saying, I represent this, this visible power, so I need to display it. I need to display it every time, which you actually see not in the Liberian societies, but you see everywhere. You see someone who is a minister, so you have to wait like 3 hours before you meet him, or her, which you see it's terrible. People display the power.
Of course, that's one of the affirmations of Shakespeare. Power is at best when it is not used in a brazen form. Power is at best when people are humbled by the power that they have. And I think that is the beauty of it all. We're talking about the fact that, this whole idea of what has literature got to do with it. When we talk about the it meaning national conversation or even global conversation, what has literature got to do with it? And in the words of Chinua Achebe, literature, because literature is live, literature is the confluence of so many forces and so many activities in the world. And so when we talk about power, when we talk about politics, when we talk about economics, when we talk about psychology or psychiatry, we are still talking about literature
Yeah, we
because
are.
it remains the confluence of all these, the variety of the activities that we talk about, the variety of themes that we talk about. Which leads me to another question, which has to do with, now we've been talking about the content of your work. Uh, it is very much important for a writer to be able to talk not only about the content, but also what goes into the craft of what he or she does. So probably you want to comment on how you go about your craft in terms of do you have certain rituals? Do you have certain regiments you follow whenever you are writing?
Yes, I yes, I do. Um, for those young Liberians who aspire to become writers, you need to maintain certain rituals, and that's to read a lot. And I think that's the very first beginning, because I think literature, every novel we write is a response to another novel that we read. Tolstoy wrote Anna Karenina because he admired Flaubert, Madame Bovary, and Orhan Pamuk wrote My Name is Red because perhaps he admired in the Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. So every novel that I've written is a response to another novel, a writer that I admire, and said, "Oh, I think I will attempt to do this in my own way, in my own humble way." So I write in the mornings. I wake up early, but since the corona and because we have since the crisis last year, because we have a lot of time on our hand, I don't follow that that ritual anymore. But usually I woke up at 6 and work till 12, and most of my afternoons are free. I go for readings. Now with the memoir being just published 3 weeks ago. So tomorrow, for example, I'm going to another city. I'll be talking about Gungi Wationgo's Decolonizing the Mind. And so what I do is, because there are some writers who will, before they begin to write, will have to, they would, make notes and then chapters, synopsis, and everything. And when it's only after that is done, will they begin to write. I don't work that way. I have this idea, this general idea in my mind. I just start to write, and then and then sometimes divide it in chapters. But I think every writer has his or her own approach. Some will have. I heard that John Irving do. I mean, sometimes when he's writing his novels, he has like 12 or 13 notebooks, for every chapter a notebook. I don't know, so you see, but I don't write that way. And the disadvantages that I have, my approach is that, after you have this general idea, especially for complex novels, you find after, when you are done, when the editor is going through, he said, "Oh, Vamba, you said A here, and now you're saying B here." When you say A here, it has to be B, throughout. It has to be A throughout, not A here and a B there and a C there. So sometimes you need to discipline yourself to work out the chapters, and then before you can start to write. When you're writing short novels, maybe that is not necessary. But for example, the Black Napoleon, it took me 7 years. I mean, when I wrote the first draft, it was like 1,500 pages, and I sent it to my publisher, and it told me, "No, Vamba, I mean, we are serious literature lovers will love this, but most readers are lazy nowadays. So, so I advise you to go back to this novel and rewrite it entirely. Because what I tried, because the subject matter is a larger than life character, the
Yeah.
summary Touré character, and my inspiration was Sebin Usman, and who had written this. I mean, he wrote a frame script. I have it somewhere here. I bought it. I bought it for €1,000, and yes, a frame script. Can you imagine, Jackie, that in my city? I mean, I did not have to go to Senegal or to New York. I entered the second-hand bookshop, and this bookseller told me, Vamba, I've got something special for you. He showed me Simbin Usman's Samori Touré's film script. It was like, what? I could not believe it. So I counted the cash because I was thinking, if I don't buy this right now, so yes. So sometimes you become intimidated, and that's the problem, because when I say, oh, Sembene has attempted to do this, and perhaps he did it better, although he did not succeed in making the film, but seeing this huge something, I became intimidated, and at a certain point, it took me a while. For years, I was struggling with this novel, and the key to it, was how do I perceive somebody? What is my definition of this historical character? That was to writing the novel.
Does he have? I mean, are there letters or anything that he wrote that you can get into the character or no?
No. Yes, there are. Actually, yes, there are. You mean the Samuel Touré character?
Yeah.
Oh yes. Actually, there is a Frenchman who actually to make it more intimidating, I actually bought this Frenchman's book. The first volume is 5,000 pages of history. Jackie, can you imagine 5,000 pages? I mean, as someone who admired me, a reader of mine from Holland went to Senegal and bought this book. It was published by IFAN. 15,000 pages of historical material. What are you going to do with that? So I was saying, my God, if he has done it better, I was saying, so how do I write about this historical character about whom so much has been written? How do I define him? So I began to, I brought him closer to myself.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You find an instance or an event.
Yes.
And then pull out from there.
Indeed. Yes. That was the key. And so that could be an advice to others who are trying to do the same. Don't be intimidated by any subject matter. I mean, people are writing about, great historical characters. People are writing about Napoleon and other things. So it's all possible. So
the point you made about plan, whether it is an elaborate plan or a more circumscribed plan, it is very much important to. I know as a writer, if you have a project, for some time you carry the key aspects in your head for some time. Yet it is very much important. It's like thinking about a building, and how many rooms the building is going to have, and if it's going to be a tall building, how many stories and what have you, until you get something on paper to have the contours. You cannot see your way so clearly. You cannot see, even if you've written for a number of years, still there is that scaffold. You have to create that scaffold that is supposed to help you plow your way through. And once you can see through the imaging of whatever you're talking about, and then have it on paper, that should be a way to help you do your very best in getting your work as clearly as possible.
Indeed.
That's good.
Indeed.
So your most recent book is a memoir, right?
Yes, it's a
So tell us
memoir.
about it. Uh-huh. Tell us about
Yes,
it.
it's unprecedented love. I some time ago, I think it was before the crisis, my daughter, whom I named after my mother, Bindu, my Bindu, she wrote her name on this piece of paper. She brought it to me. She had designed it beautifully, and she asked me to tell her something about her grandmother because she did not get to meet her grandmother. And I've been telling her stories about her grandmother, but then I told her an anecdote from my childhood with her. And the next morning, I woke up with this sense of urgency to do something about this request.
Yes.
It should not just be something that I just, you know, let it go. And and I began to make notes, but I did not take it seriously. Just making notes because that's how I work first. I make these notes, and then I was writing a novel, and then this crisis happened, and oh my God, for the first time, I was confronted with something. I mean, what I experienced in Kuwait with the war and everything was terrible, but there was this enemy that we couldn't see, and we didn't know what would happen tomorrow. I fled the war in Kuwait. I knew if I go through this border, if I take this route, I might get to Jordan and then later to Syria. But with the virus, we didn't know where it was coming from, and there's so many unanswered questions. And so that's when I began to write this memoir, and in a letter form, inspired by James Baldwin and Marilyn Robinson Gilead. She is a beautiful novel, and in which this reverend is directs a letter to his 7 or 8 years old child, and beautifully done, like in James Baldwin did with his letters. And
Sidney Poitier too.
huh?
Sidney Poitier, he wrote letters to my granddaughter.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So in a letter form, in which I decided to tell her about my childhood with her grandmother in Kolahun and my life with my grandmother, because they were the one who brought me up. I lost my father when I was a child, so brought up by women. So the women in my life, my grandmother and my mother, telling her these stories and my life in Kolahun, and then moving to Kuwait, and also the theme that hold the memoir together are the values that I got from my mother and grandmother. People used to ask my mother, why are you being so good to others, to total strangers? And my mother would say, I'm doing that so that one day others will be good to my son, to my only son.
Yeah.
So she, and this belief in the goodness of humanity, of human beings, it's a recurring theme in my memoir. So I went to Kuwait, and I came across people who emphasized, who confirmed those values, and I decided not to include Syria because my novel is going to be set in Syria. So I decided, all right, I'm not going to repeat the
I'm
same
looking
story.
forward to reading that because I'm looking forward to reading that. My father is from Syria, so I need to read that.
Oh, wonderful. Because I experienced. This is what I try to tell people, because there are so many Syrian refugees now here, about the Syrian hospitality. And it was wonderful. We my brother and I, Umar Kamara from Vahum, we are in Syria. So one day we befriended a Syrian soldier. So he invited us to his home, and to his village, outside of Damascus. We left We came there and he was not there, But when we came, we announced ourselves as being friends of this guy. We didn't even have a letter to prove that we're friends of. But they received us, Jackie, and we stayed there for a week. Can you imagine? I mean, they were so good. And actually, it was his father-in-law who received us, and he was telling us Hassan Isan Adami. He was saying Hassan is really human being, because when an Arab, when a human being, you say you're an Adam, to emphasize being an Adam, the humanity. So it was. I wrote a short story one time about that Syrian hospitality. So I want to write about my experience there, putting it in a different context than the story I just told you.
So, talking about themes, what are some of the core themes of your writings? What core themes? Because actually, you I'm sure you are aware that as a writer, there are certain themes. They may not be global themes. If they are global, fine. But there are certain themes that are recurrent in your own writings, and that it kind of increase the power of how much people are drawn to your own body of work.
Yes. No, I've tried to explore friendship. I've tried to explore love, and the power of the African women, the Liberian women, especially. Actually, all my characters are a reflection of my grandmother and my mother, the women character in my novels. And so people are saying, oh, I mean, we're surprised, the Dutch readers or the Western readers. They say, oh, I mean, because they have this misconception of our mothers and sisters, And I'm telling them, look, come on, we're not talking about, I mean, human rights or women rights. I mean, some of our mothers have been defining how the right of our fathers and brothers and things for centuries. Yes. So especially,
yeah. In fact, what you are saying is a reminder. We were talking about Siben Usman. He made a point some time ago, not too long before he passed. He said that the value of the African woman cannot be quantified. Yeah, the value of the African woman cannot be quantified. In other words, it permeates.
Yes.
It permeates the value of the African woman permeates the African society. I know in every setting or in every assertions, there might be a few exceptions.
Yes.
But at the core of it all, the value of the African woman, that's what he was expressing in that particular statement, that the value of the African woman cannot be quantified.
And I find it really interesting that if you look at the first novel from Liberia, Guyana Pal, or the second novel, Love in Ebony, both written by men, both I call feminist novels.
Yes.
Strong women.
Indeed.
And we do ourselves a disservice, or some people do a disservice, because instead of looking at the traditional strength of the African woman, even with this genital cursing, I'm not talking about cutting, the genital cursing, where they strip to show shame to the men. The one that Lima Bowie.
Yes, that powerful
things. Yes. I mean, look at just recently the women of Maryland County in Liberia who marched, because one of their sons had been ritualistically killed. The strength of African women and Liberian women, can never. I mean, it's like, and then what we do is we jump on a bandwagon. Me too. You know. Feminism. But you're coining those Western words, is what Hawa Ibrahim said. She said, I'm a womanist. you know.
Really?
And a womanist says that I am myself, I am complete. But in the
God.
African way, we need a family to come together, right? So the man complements the woman. You know, it's not the women are strong beyond measure.
Yeah, yes.
You know, but this new mode of radical feminism
No.
has usurped by
Yes.
rewriting the narrative
Yes.
to tell the indigenous women you were never strong.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
because according to the West, you are oppressed.
Yeah.
Let me
Yes.
free you. You
Yes.
know, and no, these women have their own traditional societies and they have their own power and they wield this power. So
Yes.
what I see is that more and more is the elite women, you know, taking their cue from the West and saying, oh, you know, yeah, feminism, I'm this, but you must also understand that you can be strong and allow others to be strong in different, multiple ways.
Yes.
The way you exhibit your strength may not be how I exhibit my strength, but that doesn't lessen my strength.
That is a powerful statement there, Jackie. That is a powerful statement there. And that is why history is very much important. That is why context is very much important. Failure to understand history, failure to understand context, definitely what approach you bring to a concept or you bring to a phenomenon might be a disjointed way of approaching that particular phenomenon or that particular concept. So it takes time. It takes time. Not that because it takes time, you are dormant in the pursuit of whatever you want to do. You want to be able to be meticulous about what you are doing.
Yes.
You have to be very diligent at trying as much as possible to get to understanding the context or the phenomenon you are speaking about. It is the only thing that is going to be redemptive.
I'll still hold this book up. Okay, so your memoir has come out. How old is your daughter?
She is 11 now. She was 10 when I started, and she graced the cover of the memoir, and she's.
Do you have a copy there? You could show us.
Yes, just a minute.
Yes. Could you show us a copy? Yes, Prof. So.
Are there more comments or something?
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Want to see the unprecedented love?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's her.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
So get your copy of the book, please, and read it.
We are looking for a translator to be translated in English, and yes, and it's been well received here, and yes, very in the individual reactions, people writing me, telling me they enjoyed it very much. Yes, and it's really. A critic yesterday's newspaper said that there was homage to Liberian women or the women in my life, my mother, my grandmother, and my daughter, my wife, and
please translate it so we can read it.
Yes.
So Prof and I guess the main reason we do focus on a literary hour on focus on Liberia is to discuss not only Liberian works basically, but to situate it also in African literature. And we always say that arts, they're very important to Liberia's development. That you cannot separate a people from the writings, the art of the country. That it sets the moral tone, but it elevates people. So as we are about to wind down, if you were to make a case for literature in Liberia, for the upliftment of the arts, why would you say that is important to national development?
I think it's everything. The people are defined by the stories they tell. I think it was Simben Usman who said, "We are stories," and it is the writers, the storytellers, the musicians, the artists who define the trajectory Liberia is taking, not the politicians. And so it is very, 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 very important. I'm surprised. I mean, writers and artists are celebrated elsewhere. So we are doing very little for Liberian artists. Very, very little, and nothing at all for the writers. And those are the people. I mean, the very fact that I left Liberia and traveled all this way to write about a character called Halangi, a historical character, to make his story accessible to an audience that is not Liberian. It's an extension of Liberian civilization and Liberian identity across the globe. No politician can do that. So it is our arts that define us, and that map out our the road, into the future. So whatever we can do, individuals, to support Liberian artists, because I'm using artists as not writers necessarily, is very, very good, because we don't have to depend on the Liberian government, because I am who I am today thanks to the work of the professor, and thanks to people like the late Sankawolo and Baltimore. I grew up reading these stories. They are the one they inspired me first before I decided to step out to read other books. That's where it began. So we are first, defined by our stories. It is inspired by these stories, and then we begin to embrace other stories. So yes.
Yeah, I live about an hour from Mark Twain's house. So yeah, and they have taken his entire study and put it into a little house, and then you have the Mark Twain Fellowship. So writers from all over the world will come and work in Mark Twain's study.
Yes.
And Mark Twain is one of the.
We should even argue further that the entire Western civilization was defined by its literature, and how the West still perceive others was defined by its literature. And this is why Edward Said's Orientalism was it's like a bombshell when it was published, because for the first time he was trying to say, all right, this is how you've been looking at others.
Yes.
And you're still looking at others. Yes. So it is so important to us, for us to continue to tell our stories. And Liberia, there's so many stories that are yet to be told.
So many. It's a rich. So many, and I hope that your books and this interview will inspire people, like how Prof. Nangbe has inspired us to keep writing. There are dips and lows, but we keep writing. If Prof looks at it and he said, "What is you have here?" You write again, and you write until you get it right. Yeah, but we're so grateful that you were able to. It's 12 midnight there, so it's 1 o'clock there now, right?
It's 1 o'clock here.
We're so sorry, but we're so grateful that you took the time to come and join us. We do have a project for all of you who are listening and watching. The time is coming up. Don't forget you to write an essay. What does Liberia mean to me?
Wonderful.
700 words. Just send it to us. We will. Liberia's Independence Day is coming up. We want to be able to read some of these and say, this is what Liberia means to Vamba. This is what Liberia. Or even call you on to read it yourself that day. So please, audience, don't forget. And you, Vamba, if you would like to, it could be a letter to Liberia. It could be one of humor. It could be one of sadness. But as Prof.
Well,
Anangwe says, nobody has to tell you what Liberia means to you.
no,
You
I
know, it
will.
crawls from. In fact, it doesn't crawl. It bursts out of you. You know, and as
Yes.
Ernest Hemingway say, you put your pen to paper and you bleed. So you write that and you send it to us. Focus on Liberia at gmail.com. So we can look at it and then call you and tell you that it has been accepted. Well, not accepted, but that we receive it. So Prof, do you have any last words for Vamba before we kind of?
No, I think it's this. If we're talking about hours that we've been here, this is going to be one of the hours we will always think about. The idea that the son of one of the sons of Liberia was able to go to a number of places and continue to kind of improve on his craft and share it with the rest of humanity. We are very happy about that. And again, at the center of it all is the idea that literature is life, and it helps us always to understand what life is. We thank him for the sacrifice he made to be up 12 o'clock a.m. when he's supposed to be enjoying his sweet sleep and come out here. And that broadens the meaning of what we continue to talk about in this place here, which is the importance of literature. And may, through our interaction with him, people get to understand a little bit more about the meaning of literature and the meaning of life.
Thank you.
Vamba, again, we thank you. If you will please stay on, don't log off right away. Because usually when they play this song, we sit at the back. I need to talk to you about this book again.
All right.
So please don't log off. And we would like to say thank you to our audience. And we would like to say to all of you that whether you are a writer, whether you are a singer, whether you're a painter, whether you embrace the arts, whether you think it's doubtful that the arts can propel Liberia forward, whatever you're leaning, whatever your belief, we are all Liberians. Don't forget that we are all Liberians. And we'll say thank you to you and have a nice weekend.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.